5:15 in the morning. Wake up time to get a taxi and leave England with all my peeps, all my hombres, all my fellow Hobbingtons behind. Go to Colombia. Titillation is kicking in. Here we go. Touchdown in Colombia. Dropped my bags off and hit in the street. Already got some of these cool South America coloured buildings. Cool in the daytime. Check it out. Look at the city. It's just walled in. Cool details. Bogota is actually the highest altitude city in the world. Well, like altitude by size, it's up there. Oh, look at you. Oh, you beautiful. What's the name?
Draco.
Draco. Hello, Draco. Where am I? What year is it? Well, who am I? What's good? My fellow peasants. How you all doing? Damn, that feels so good to say that again. Yo, what's up guys? Back from a long hiatus. As I've travelled over to here, South America, Colombia, Bogota. This is technically day 2, but I feel like I lost the other days to mad jet lag. And yeah, waking up, getting a little brewing, reading a couple of chapters of Daily Stoic, which I really wanted to know. It's very, very inspirational. And I was looking for inspiration to see how I wanted to come back. There's so much to cover. And I know I've done this so many times over the last 2-3 years, taken little like stints away, and then always wondered how to return. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do whatever feels right in my own continuity. And yeah, chatting to some of you guys on Twitter. It was really nice to see a lot of you were saying, yo, dude, what you been up to? I don't know what you've been up to. Yeah, we'll cover the fun, fancy stuff. And I thought that was really, really profound. Really, oh, traffic's loud as hell out here. Very wholesome. So I thought, you know what, that's what I'm going to come back to. In this vid, I'm going to cover everything I've been doing over the last 2/3 years. It has been the maddest adventure. Crazy. The arcs have been insane. And for me at least, this video is going to be valuable just for retelling the events that have been happening. I know I've been sharing very choppy bits of it over Twitter, and most of those are only sort of half truths of the full happening. So I thought, you know what, yeah, let's do it. Let's come back and share that journey. So that's what this video is going to be. Oh, coffee smells so good. But yeah, I'm going to start with a little Daily Stoic chapter. This one really, really stood out to me with all of the happenings. Maybe it'll inspire one of you guys watching this. So, mark of a good life. You have proof in the extent of your wanderings that you never found the art of living anywhere. Not in logic, not in wealth, fame, or any kind of indulgence, nowhere. Where is it then? In doing what human nature demands. How is a person to do this? By having principles be the source of desire and action. Well, what principles? Those to do with good and evil? Indeed, in the belief that there is no good for a human being except for what creates justice, self-control, courage and freedom, and nothing evil except what destroys these things. I know that's a word salad, but that was the Stoics. I mean, give the boys a break. They were part of the ancient Greek world, and Roman world, but that was Marcus Aurelius. And yeah, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? What am I here for? Most of us struggle with these questions. Sometimes when we're young, sometimes not until we're much older. Rarely do we find much in the way of direction. But that's simply because we miss the point, as Viktor Frankl points out in Man's Search for Meaning. It is not our question to ask. Instead, it is we who are being asked the question. It's our lives that are the answer. No amount of travel or reading All clever sages can tell you what you want to know. Instead, it is you who must find the answer in your actions, in living the good life by embodying the self-evident principle of justice, self-control, courage, freedom. Yeah, guys, I've been to just about every insane location you can imagine over the last 2-3 years, something like 10, 12 different countries, and deep into the heart of some of the most wild, naturey environments, on top of mountains, down in valleys. Of course, oceans. I've been on some of the highest highs and also the lowest lows, for absolute sure. But I did it my way. Really began this journey, you know, after having such an amazing few years from Final Fantasy up until now, you know, doing really what I loved as a passion, what I really love as a passion. Being fortunate enough to hit such a dream, a benchmark, aspiration and a goal that at that stage, I thought, you know, if I could do this, if I could cover Final Fantasy for like a significant portion of time, and I'd be happy forever and ever. And when that broke down, I found that that was, not that it wasn't true, but it just wasn't the full picture. It then became about just that, travel, going to different environments, different places, thinking that on some horizon, in some new land, maybe it's the environment that is keeping me not fully realizing, actualizing what I feel in my heart of hearts I'm looking for. Maybe I'll find it in a different place. And just like Marcus Aurelius pointed out, it didn't matter what new setting, new endeavor, new place or new project or new hobby that I took on, did it emerge? And it slowly, gradually, painstakingly at times, finally helped me to readjust to the realization that a state of mind is something that you cultivate, you don't find on the dip of a beautiful golden horizon. And I think I found that a tough pill to swallow at times. Realizing that everything that I wanted to manifest in this life was going to come down to the hard, brutal work of readjusting and finding my perception, my motivations, having the discipline to frame and work on the things that, I don't know, after 31 next month, 31 freaking years, I've come to learn it is right for me and what lifts me up and what makes me the best version of myself, and having the willpower to avoid the things that drag me down, though they're pleasurable, though they're fun, though they really do resonate with my derpy, trolly, gluttonous, like greedier aspects of myself, which is very strong in me. I'm sure many of you can resonate with this, being gamers. Like there's the real beauty of what we get and what we gain from video games, but there's also a tremendous amount of, for me at least, maybe some of you, coping mechanism, avoidance, plunging into fantasy worlds, environments, stories, narratives that in some degree, in some weird, roundabout, messed up way, we would like for ourselves. I think the archetype of the hero is something that sort of sits in the center of every human's consciousness and psyche in some way or another, that we want to become the heroes in our own journeys. And some of us really push and strive for that, and others of us, and I've certainly been this person many times, don't believe it's even possible. And our self-worth, our view of ourselves is just far too broken down to believe ourselves truly capable of actualizing that version of ourselves that I'm sure we've all at some point daydreamed of ourselves, right? It all starts with a vision, an intention, or maybe just like a sense of what we could be doing or could be achieving or out there experiencing. But we never really fully stepped through that door. And the last 2-3 years was me casting all of that off and saying, okay, I'm not there. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I have absolutely no clear, set, easy route to stepping through this door. It's going to take a lot of adapting and adjusting on the way. It's going to take a lot of having just confidence and belief in myself, and a trust that the things and the pieces will slide and manifest into my experience and propel me towards this direction that I've got to be doing. And there was a part of me that believed that, that was enough, setting out with good intention. If I had the right intention to be better, to do better, to learn, to adapt, to evolve, to grow, that would be enough, and it was, and it is. And that's what's beautiful about it. The synchronicities of the things that have happened around the last 2-3 years have really shown me, and I want to share that with you guys. I'm gonna get my delicious smelling brew. I'm gonna put this phone down, my arm is killing. Forgive what may be some nonsensical word salad to some of y'all. Maybe you'll just get some joy at seeing some pretty nutty, balmy travel stuff. All right, let's do it. Oh, okay, where to begin? Where to start? Hopefully this all looks and sounds good. This is gonna somewhat be the setup for Final Fantasy 16. Still got a few bits to finesse. 16, man. A new mainline as, again, I think more than the synchronicities of my own personal feels, like personal character arcs and life arcs. It's always been the synchronicities with Final Fantasy. It's like the other piece that finds this unique, maybe it's just my brain drawing connections. I mean, that's what finding meaning is, right? It's something that you project onto highly subjective experience and happenings and derive meaning from. And yeah, I've just derived from such a young age, just this tremendously synchronistic meaning and profundity of Final Fantasy. And coming here to Colombia, which is quite a few motivations, despite all of this travel and what I said earlier, that going and trying to find yourself in a new environment and thinking that the baggage and the difficult questions or the difficult development that you need to do in life will just magically transform. I've definitely learned that that's not the case. All of those things still follow you into the new environments. Yes, they can be a catalyst for like change and swapping into so many new environments. It has its cons, obviously, for always feeling ungrounded, hard to find like a routine, a stability. But it definitely comes with its pros. Each one is a new start, fresh beginning, a new opportunity to create a new narrative. And that's what I really love about it, because I do believe that our minds, we are so influenced and reminded and triggered and stimulated. We create memories and associations with things. That's how our trauma works. I've seen people go from living in their own adult lives at like through their 20s and they have to go back home to live with parents at 30s, and they almost swap back to their teenage states. I've seen that with a lot of people. All their worst habits, staying up like little night goblins and eating Doritos and devouring chicken tendies at 3 o'clock in the morning when you should just go to sleep. I maybe just talk about myself here. I was a chronic night habit eater. So yeah, I've really loved that, and there is real value in travel, in going through the world, exploring it, finding yourself. I've said it, every country, there's a different Jake. Japan Jake, different to America Jake, Jake. And in these different versions of ourselves, at least I found that who I think I was, how I think I thought and felt about things, that when you're in a fixed location, can become so set in stone. It becomes so habitual and ingrained that it becomes almost absolute in your mind. And that does present a very difficult obstacle for revamping yourself, finding new qualities and skill sets within yourselves, tapping into new desires, new possibilities and potentialities. But yeah, all of that aside, Colombia, of all of them, was the country I had the least expectation and the most anticipation, and very much feeling this was a significant change, significant new direction, a new happening, a new phase. A big chapter had just closed and a new one was opening. And to feel like Final Fantasy 16 timing itself with that as well, really powerful for me, at least. But before I go deeper into that, I'll try not to keep this video too long, but you guys know me, I will. I'm going to be honest and sincere. Like I said, everything that I've kind of presented has always been authentic, but never a full truth, because this is YouTube, man. This is online. You've got your personal life and you've got your online life. And I think it's no bad thing to have a separation between those things and to set those sort of boundaries. And in fact, I think it's necessary for anyone watching this who has also wanted to thrive online anyway. I know there's a lot of people who've asked me for sort of advice and how you do it. Spoken to many channels smaller than myself who are going through those early difficulties, the 0 viewer section of creating an online presence, and then all the stages of scaling that up and all the difficulties that come with that, the inauthenticity Because that's the thing, separating your online and your personal persona, how they interact, how the second that camera turns on, how you show up. This is all very natural. This is all very normal. I think this is something that can easily spin and bug people out and think that they need to be a kind of way, present themselves in a kind of way, show nothing but the good sides. I think that's generally what the internet has done. All of our social medias is we post the best versions of ourselves, the ones that were smiling in front of that camera, but the second that picture was taken, we went back to arguing with our spouse or friend or spiraling in a hole. And that's the thing, there's been so many opportunities in the last couple of years to do that, right, guys? Spiral into a hole. COVID-19 changed everything. The world went round a U-turn, and it totally flipped upside down. Some people thrived in the environment that happened. Other people had to go through the most difficult and dark times of their entire lives. And for me, at least, I was really fortunate enough to not lose anyone during that pandemic. For me, I was very fortunate that my inner introvert is almost as equally strong as my extrovert. I can switch between the two natures quite easily. So the idea of being like locked up and put into lockdown for months on end really did not bother me. I am happy alone. I can thrive that way, though there is absolutely a need for connection and human company that always lurks, always lingers, and I'm constantly jumping between the two. I love doing the conversation below. And introverts and extroverts are just labels. We're all on a scale in different degrees, but I'm curious where you've found yourself in the journey of going within and being by yourself versus interacting with the world around you. And that's a big part of it. I think after COVID, I knew, although it didn't spin me out, that wasn't what spun me out. I did get spun out, but we'll cover that in a moment. I knew I had to go out and reinvigorate my worldview of people. I think that had soured. I think there were a lot of narratives that had soured around the time that Seven Remake was coming out. So I'm going to try not to make this video my entire life chronicle, but I think it adds good context. And maybe even reason to why I find myself very comfortable in sort of these unpredictable, wild, on the road, amorphous, ungrounded, traveling through the world scenarios. I think it happened because when I was young, I had to live in Turkey for about 2 years. 2 years I lived there as a kid, and it was a horrible experience. I've told this story, but it was being out there, roaming the streets like a little orphan, more or less. I had a mother there, but she wasn't any real kind of one. And then I came to live with my grandparents. And when that all fell through. And it was at that stage, a very broken childhood. I played FF7. That really did heal a traumatized young boy. And it was when I first had my experience of a stable home. And that's why Seven sits so dearly, so dearly. It just imprinted itself onto me at that super young, vulnerable stage. It did. It became a real association with home, which I think is so profound, considering that is one of the core, if not the most core theme of Final Fantasy VII, besides obviously environmentalism and memory. Home is a big one. Humans were etc. before they found a love for home, and it was the settling down process that made them human. It was a beautiful aspect of them. They were Marlene, are they going to take her home? Are they going to destroy the bar? Cloud and Tifa's home being destroyed. Going to all the characters' homelands and seeing the different versions and the beauties of it, and what you're fighting for and what you're protecting, but also what you're attached to, what you're very, very attached to. And that leads to the downside of the fear of losing, of holding on to. I can't remember the Qigong master. I do his work most mornings, or I try to at least. He said something really profound the other day in one of his videos watching, that the things that we try to pull towards us will naturally be pushed away further, and the things that we try to push away always come closer. And home is one of those things. Man has gone to war and fought and died and bled and battled one another for our homelands since the dawn of time. Final Fantasy VII really captures that theme. Anyway, flash forward a few years, managed to get my own home. Managed to buy, I was fortunate enough. I just scrimped and saved and dwelled like a little cave goblin back when I was an aviation engineer. And when I went into my first home, I was there for no more than 6 months before Final Fantasy VII Remake got announced. The remake, the thing I've been petitioning for, joining Facebook groups, writing Square Enix letters. I like to think I made a difference, but honestly, I think the money spoke more than anything, than the fans' passion for it. And for that to happen at that time, I just bought my own home in to see 7 Remake, the theme of home, right, come back. Man, it gives me goosebumps. Give me goosebumps, yo. And there I was, over the course of 15, over the course of the 7 and all the little details and information coming out, having some of the best years. Really, really were some of the best years. I don't know where you guys were. If you were here with this channel, let me know in the comment section below if you were back in those 15 days when we were grooving and moving and bouncing and spitting and riffing and theorized tinfoil hatting over what the hell this thing that was once Versus 13 was now going to be. Beautiful time. Really fond, awesome section of my life. And yeah, those years went on, and after 7 Remake Part 1 came out, that's when it all took a turn. Things were naturally breaking down that needed to be broken down in my home setting, in my personal home setting. I broke up with a long-term partner at that point, something of which, and this feels very strange to say, but we're going with authenticity, guys. We're going with authenticity. Anyone who's still watching this video, shout out to you, rep out to you, because you're sticking with this. And this really is a vid more just for me, more than anything else. And that experience, I won't go into details, but tore my heart out of my arsehole. That was one of the darkest stages, to experience heartbreak on that kind of degree, that kind of hurt, that experience of tragedy, betrayal, anger, uncertainty, loss, all of it culminated throughout that period of time. And that was happening over the course. It was not an instant thing. It was a slow, multi-year happening that slowly transitioned. A good part of it was my fault. A good part of it was other people. And there was so much I learned in that time. And I think that's why I found myself towards Stoicism and Taoism, because I was really trying to reconcile in my mind, to try to find this peace. I was just desperate to find a reconciliation with what was going on. There was all these actions and events of others and these things that were outside of my control. I blamed and lamented and was harsh on myself for all of my own faults, and even attributed a lot of things that were outside of my control as being my fault. And I could not separate the two. They were just all merged into one really icky, painful, honestly torturous kind of feeling. And I'd never known that degree of hurt before. And I can finally really resonate. And if anyone has been or is now in that kind of place, you know what I'm talking about. That type of existence where from morning until night you're just plagued. You're just burdened and overrun with so much questioning, so much doubt. Just from the moment you open your eyes, it's just... But there's just no break. There's no release. There's no moment of ease. It's not something that or it seems like you're not cultivating or creating the hurt that you're feeling. It's just there. It's like infused into your body. And for me, things like Stoicism, some more Eastern sort of esoteric philosophy and religions was really what anchored me. Besides just going through the passage of time, I mean, that's the biggest healer, but there are things you can do to help that process. And I think forming, like we saw in the Marcus Aurelius chapter earlier, forming some principles around the idea of justice, self-control, goodness, but sifting between and truly understanding what's in your control and what's out of your control, internal and external. Forming a distinct separation between the two, and then finding a real acceptance, not a temporary, not a plastered over or repressed one, acceptance with there are things in this world, there are people, there are events, there are an injustice, there are happenings, people get taken from us, people do things, and they are out of our control. And by that very nature, trying to do anything to control or stabilize or swim against that tide or make it otherwise is a fool's game, and you're only prolonging your own hurt, only prolonging your own downturn. And that's something I really had to work through before also just realizing We are human. We're supposed to go through these difficult arcs, these painful stages. This is what the polarity, this is price for having the beautiful things in our lives, for forming connections, for having experience, for having hopes and wants and dreams. All of that soldier first class needs and goodness that Zack Fair was here telling us about. You're not going to realize any of that unless you're also willing to accept its opposite, its polarity. You can't have a dream without sometimes going through a nightmare. And the nightmare and the dream is two very important chapters of the game to go through, because they add contrast to one another. Contrast. Accept contrast. To realize that any relationship, friends, family, romantic, any work, all of it is going to need contrast. Dark and light are the backdrop to one another. And I know that most of you watching this, you know this, you've heard this at some point, but there is, and I had many times, but it's a concept that you got to sit with, and you got to look at it from different angles again and again and again. And just when you think you've got it, just when you think you've understood it, when you've finally hit your resolution point, that too shall pass. It reminds me, I only saw this yesterday, I think it was Tom Hanks. He said one thing he wished he had learned is this too shall pass. Oof, damn, I wish I had accepted this early. Even when people were telling me, the passage of time is your friend. Just let time pass. Anyone who's been in a dark space and come out of it, you know it. But even if you're in a dark space right now, just need to be reminded, because I needed to be reminded. I need to be told again and again, this too shall pass. You're in the worst stage of your life right now, this too shall pass. You're going through something that was utterly devastating, utterly unfair, this too shall pass. You're struggling with the weight of your own failures and the burdens of things that you did or did not do, this too shall pass. But also, you think you've got to a great stage in your life. You think everything is amazing. You think finally everyone around gets you. I think that's what Tom Hanks said. This too shall pass. And that concept of impermanence and acceptance of the rhythms that happen. There's ebbs and flows, peaks and troughs. The tides come in and out. And this is the melody. This is the melody of memory. This is a dance of things. Anyway, I think I butchered that Tom Hanks line, but I think you get the gist. And yeah, as that breaking down process happened, and I had to leave that home that had so much fond memories and go into a different environment, a different world, I was kind of kicked off the cliff into this experience. There wasn't, and there was, and there wasn't. That's the thing. At the time, it felt like I was thrust into things with no choice, but now with hindsight 2020, I can see all of the patterns that I played a role in, all of the actions that I took, that I was breaking things down in my life. Consciously and unconsciously, I was pushing myself out of that place because I knew I needed to. Even though I didn't want to, even though I hated it, something in me knew. And the point that I left was just at the point of the 7 remake ending. I just finished it, and it was a few months later. And to think that that's when the crew leaves Midgar, that's when home is left behind, that's fear of the great blue sky, and that the world goes open world. To think that happened at that exact point, again, synchronicity, man, for me at least. Crazy. This is going to come across extra crazy. How hobo-ish my hair has become. Look at this bad boy. So there I was, guys. Nothing but me, my bike, some panniers, some water filtration. I'd really built it in a way where I could do sustained, long periods in nature. Where I could go to those hidden points deep in nature reserves where I wouldn't see another human being for 3 or 4 days. And I had been planning to go in the summer to Scotland. If anyone don't know, Scotland, north of UK. Very cold. This camera focus. Cold, thistly, nettly, pretty hilly section of the world. But like a lot of things, you get thrust onto timelines faster than you expect at times. I feel like that's happening a lot. I don't know what you guys think, but generally with the world as we're in now, I feel like things are happening so fast. Things are evolving and developing and upgrading and also breaking down. politically, socially, technologically, environmentally. It's all happening so fast. And to think that's happening in the world around us, to think that doesn't play a role in the acceleration that happens with our own things, yeah, I think it does. And it certainly happened for me because, yeah, I planned to go in summer. I was thrust out in winter. I had to go. There was no choice. I stuck on the Shire music and I set out. Totally into the unknown. Never done anything like this before. Never trained for it. And there I was, hustling the hills of Scotland. Every step of the way. Oh, my porridge is just done. Got a nice bowl of gruel. Nice bowl of gruel coming, which is the best habit that has honestly stayed for bikepacking. When you're out there and you can only carry a certain amount of supplies and you need to like nourish and fuel your body for the 8-10 hours of traveling, and all the cramps and hurts, all the discomfort and the isolation that came with that. Really, really tricky. But there was always a payoff. There was always some gorgeous horizon, some magical forest, or just awe-inspiring moments of just like true wonderment, true bliss and awe with the world around. And I think that is such an integral thing that grounded me, because while I went through those difficult arcs, and I was emotionally blasted, man. And for me, being on that bike, hours every single day, just with nothing to do but stare at the open road ahead, it was making me work through and sit with no distractions. I think that's the biggest problem with the world we live in. There's so much we can distract ourselves with. The people, substances, entertainment, and an entire online world. God damn this porridge. I'm just going to get out. Here we go. Nice bowl of slop. I'm just looking at the time. I may have to make this a two-parter. Really kick off from that point. I'm sure some of you have already heard this section. I've told it before. And yeah, on the next vid, I'll go into the new section. But yeah, what I was quickly saying is I think there's so much in the world that lends to allowing us to repress and do anything but the necessary healing work that we got to do. I can really see why, because there were so many moments where I wanted some sort of distraction, some sort of momentary relief, even if it was artificial, superficial, shallow, hollow, even destructive for myself, anything but to go through the healing. And I had no choice. And it made it so much more painful. It made it so much more visceral. But with the backdrop of nature, the biggest healer, the thing that every single human being, it doesn't matter where we are, what our status is, who we are, what we've gone through, that is the one grounding source we all have the ability to connect back to. I think it's necessary we connect back to. That's the most beautiful thing that I've gained from this. And this really started even before the bikepacker trip when I went to ayahuasca. This was like a year before. I don't know if you guys remember the period of time when I did the Japan vlogs. I was a very messed up person at that point. The Japan vlogs was all smiles and laughs because, of course, again, it's the internet. We only show the good bits. But during that trip, I didn't sleep 5 days straight. I was not able to eat, even though there's all this delicious, amazing Japanese food, because I was just so mentally overworked. And that eventually pushed me into the path of ayahuasca, which is a very powerful, very sacred South America, which you can imagine why I'm back here and why it's very different. I went to Peru last time. So it's very different being back in South America now. Different country, but same part of the world, of which there is this lineage of shamanism, which is going to sound like absolute nonsense to a lot of people, but there is, for me at least, and for most everyone who I've spoken to have gone and done it, something exceptionally powerful in reconnecting with roots, on going through the remembering process. And that's really what I think life is. It's remembering. So it's a weird word, because you go, remembering what? Well, I could say who we are and what we are. I know that's going to sound really ambiguous and strange to some people, but I truly do believe that we have forgotten. We have forgotten a lot of our core natures, or a lot of what is really integral to us as human beings, of what we are a part of, what we have emerged from, what we are connected to. And it's not that we've just forgotten, it's that we've forgotten what we've forgotten. I remember the Samadhi documentary really inspired me to go to ayahuasca because it spoke a lot about this, which is really finding what sits at the center of your being. You know, again, with all the things that are external or internal or transitory, like what is it that you've accumulated through memories and others and experiences that you've gone through, things that you've added to yourselves, identities that you've added. I'm this religion, I'm this person. You know, people create their identities around so much. That's what's really fascinating, is every human being is trying to find themselves, but we're looking through totally the wrong lens. I mean, there are people who find their identity in a football club. Nothing about football, just an observation, really, that is something that honestly, in our desperate need for knowing ourselves, we will find anything that can give us that answer. This is how people become Nazis, man. And that's out of left field, but there was a TED talk with a guy who became a Nazi, and just like, yeah, this is the group that made me feel like I was validated, that I was seen. That's a powerful one, man. It's really powerful. Every human being wants to be seen, and we have a bad habit of lending away our identities to the first thing that fills that void. And it's not that any of that is bad or wrong, well, unless you obviously become a freaking Nazi. Such a bad example. But it's only bad or wrong when you then stop there, when you think you've found your spot and that's where you drop all of your searching, all of your learning, all of your growing. And ayahuasca really propelled me. Like, it really just, I was looking at all kinds of different lenses. I once went weightlifting in the gym for 5 years, got to like a 600-pound squat. I was competition levels of strong. I even took steroids, man. Like a 1-month course of steroids, just because I thought it'd get big and hench and huge. Maybe that'll be it. Maybe I'll do it in politics. And to a big part, I even did it with this channel and with Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy Peasant became an easier, more digestible persona. God damn, the focus on this camera. And taking the real hard look. And yeah, so I was so skewed, and ayahuasca was just... it's like your shit has just been completely navigating in the wrong direction. The compass is broken. And not just even the compass, like you the compass, your intuition, your abilities of like judgment and reasoning to like navigate the course of your life. It's not that that's even just broken, it's that the freaking magnetic poles, it's like you're in the Bermuda Triangle. The world we have created now is the Bermuda Triangle that just has our compasses just spinning in total nonsensical directions. And I think that's what attributes so much to us feeling lost and isolated, and to any degree that there is a matrix, that is the matrix. There very much is one. It's not the one that Andrew Tate talks about. Hey, the Andrew Tate matrix, the one where you just attribute every bad or bullshit thing that's happened in your life to, it's other stuff. We live in a broken society. While it is true, and I do love the saying, it is no measure of health to measure yourself against a profoundly sick society. I think that was it, more or less. And of course we need to. Of course we need to show up in the world. We need to interact in the world. We need to find common cause and common ground, and obviously create a version of ourselves that is societally acceptable. And that's all very important and very necessary, and does not inherently have to be unhealthy. In fact, that's what the work is. Like, I feel like on this particular timeline that we're on now, one that no other stage in humanity, they had their stages, they had their hardship, but nothing like this. The propulsion and the level, the depth and the severity of the mental confusion, the erratic whirlwind where we're at a stage where we can do anywhere, go anything, see anything, consume anything. There really is no tradition, there is no community. Everything is just thrown into the blender, and what a crazy fucked up thing. What a crazy, terrible, horrible, awful, unfair, unjust thing that we all have to navigate through. And truly, guys, there's no way to sugarcoat that everything is kind of effed in the A. At the same time, what opportunity, man. What an crazy opportunity for liberation, for self-discovery, exploration. Yes, I know I'm saying that as part of my now first world like privilege, and truly I do have that. I didn't always, and that's the thing. I have known hardship. I have been poor. Actually, in a lot of weird ways, I was kind of happier during those days. Then I kind of got everything. Weirdly, crazy how that happens. I know mine is only to a small degree, but I can definitely see why celebrities and famous people, powerful people, they spin, man. They become rotten to the core. And I think it's because we don't have that core other foundation to our beings, which, whether you are spiritual and you believe that we are on the soul cycle, whatever that looks like to you, if you are spiritual in any way, like the soul's evolution, we're doing this again and again, or maybe one time until we reach that point of a higher, better selves, or even if you are atheist and you do just believe the world is mechanistic and we have formed, our consciousness formed sporadically, and we've come up through magma, rock, lava, and stardust. It doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter which one of the spectrum you are, what your belief system is. This is what I think. This is what I just intuit. What do I know? There's a peasant with a bowl of gruel. In both of those scenarios, there is something to be remembered. Whether that is that you are spawned from the earth and you are an elemental creature, that there is an elemental aspect to your being. There's something primordial at the center, that you can access through so many different things: meditation, yoga, Wim Hof method. At this point, I don't even know the direction of this video. It's just become sort of some weird life coaching nonsense. Or whether on the flip side, it is to remember the divinity of your being. And that feels strange even for me to say, who I do more lean in that kind of camp, but to remember that you are a piece of a whole, a much larger picture, a much more integral picture. And yeah, going to Scotland, jumping in cold lakes and sitting in nature, sitting in silence, shitting in the woods, it was the most powerful, valuable thing I could have done at that point in time. And yeah, of course, at no stage through any of that was there not, what am I doing? Why am I here? Like it's so absolute and clear to me now that it was such a beautiful and much needed thing. But at the time, it was anyone's guess at times. It was following an instinct, a seed that had been planted, I generally think, from ayahuasca, but also I think had been seeded in me, even just from much more simple, less extravagant, less crazy moments of taking my pain and my hurt and upset moments, going sit on a hilltop and finding it just dissolve in a sunset. That's so cheesy. Hell, man, I know in some way everyone here has had that kind of moment, kind of connection with something much, much larger, an environment much, much larger, a picture bigger than yourself. And for me, going to Scotland was such a large picture. Quite literally, it's crazy open world. I mean, stretching for miles and miles. And in that space, you with your little human problems just becomes so small. And in that way, just transmuted all of it. Didn't make it disappear. Didn't just evaporate it. Even when I came back, I still had work to do. And that even tripped up on me coming back and realizing, damn, I now got to integrate this experience. I have to keep this ball rolling. There's no moment of life where the work is just done and you can now sit back and rest. There may be stages, there may be phases, but I think it is a big trap. I spoke to a lot of people who resonated the same kind of thing, is that, when you're in a hole and everything is just going down south, just nose diving into the ground, there's typically when we in some way get the instinct, oh shit, I got to do something, man. I got to go somewhere, I've got to work on things, I've got to start eating better. Maybe I do need to actually get my sleep schedule. Maybe I do need to start dealing with that beef with that person that's been brewing for 2 decades. And we do that because we've fallen so low that there's no other choice. You're on your back staring up. At that point, what other choice do you really have? And then we get ourselves into the good slipstreams and we take it for granted. We take our foot off the gas, and slowly but slowly, that matrix starts feeding us the habits, the little ego voices, the little shadow selves. I honestly do think they piggyback on our best times. That's when they start seeding and rooting themselves. we put ourselves back into the cycle. I think we put ourselves in cycles of pain, like way, way before they start to manifest. And that's why, whether you're in a bad space and you need to start putting your trajectory up, or you're in a good space right now, just don't take your foot off the gas. If you are in that upwards trajectory, recognize that can be snatched at a moment, and to keep that momentum as a propellant. Basically, just don't do what humans are really, really fucking good at, which is taking shit for granted and thinking that good times will never end. And I can say I'm honestly in one of those good times right now. I don't want to say that in a sort of boastful way, and I certainly know if I'd have heard myself say that to myself 2-3 years ago, I'd have told myself to F off. But I would have been very, very salty. But I am in that space right now. And all really began on this latest stint, the last 2 years, which now I'm going to eat my bowl of gruel, and I'll cover on the next video. With all of the supplementary vids, I've got hundreds of hours of footage. I'll show you some of it in the next vid drop that I'll bring out more or less closer. So go click over that. Links in the description. If you found this in any way kind of interesting or insightful, or even if it was just a somewhat strange and over-personal time sink that you fell into and found yourself at this stage of the video, I thank you regardless. Comment, like, and subscribe, guys, because absolutely after these 2 vids, we're going to go straight back into the Final Fantasy. Never ever been more excited. Going to be such a beautiful couple of months for all of us who have this love and passion for this series. Like, connect over this thing together and share it and go through it together. And actually more than a couple of months. More like 6 or 7, because then we've got 7 remakes. So if you're on board, welcome you to the channel. Welcome back to you old homies. Welcome back to me to it. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Kupo!